I'm going to take you inside Windsor Castle on a day that was supposed to be historic, dignified, and celebratory. But what unfolded instead shocked the world, leaving cameras rolling, journalists stunned, and royal aides scrambling behind closed doors. Imagine standing in a grand hall, golden chandeliers dripping overhead, the hush of anticipation heavy in the air. Every eye is on the stage, every camera capturing every micro-expression, and suddenly a voice shatters the silence. "I'm your child, not him." Prince Harry's words ricochet through the ornate room like a cannon blast. The world gasps. Even the seasoned courtiers freeze. The ceremony, meticulously choreographed for decades, suddenly seems fragile, almost absurd. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What could drive a son to shout such words in front of a global audience? And why now, during a moment meant to honor another man, a football legend, a former captain of England? Was this an impulsive act of raw emotion, or the culmination of years of tension, frustration, and feelings of being invisible? And what did it mean for the monarchy, for King Charles III, and for the image of a family watched so obsessively by the world? By the end of this story, you'll realize this moment was more than a public outburst. It was a fracture exposed for the world to see, one that could change the royal narrative forever. Let's rewind and set the scene properly. It's a crisp autumn morning at Windsor Castle, the air filled with anticipation and the faint scent of polished wood, flowers, and history itself. The castle stands as a symbol of continuity, centuries of tradition, and of royal legacy. Inside, the Grand Hall is prepared for an investiture ceremony that is, on paper, ordinary for royalty, but extraordinary for the invitees. On this day, King Charles III is set to knight David Beckham. Beckham, the former England football captain, global icon, philanthropist, and fashion influencer, has captivated audiences for decades. His life has been a mix of skill, charisma, and careful cultivation of a public image. Yet today, he is stepping into a narrative he could not have fully predicted, one that would place him in the middle of a dramatic royal storm. Beckham's journey to this moment is worth examining. Unlike most who receive knighthoods primarily for service to the nation or military achievement, Beckham represents a bridge between celebrity culture and national pride. For years, he has been admired not just for his talent on the field, but also for his influence off it, his charitable endeavors, his fashion ventures, and his careful curation of a global persona. His life has been an open book, chronicled in tabloids, documentaries, and social media feeds worldwide. But while the public sees the polished, perfect images, the royal family sees something different. They see protocol, hierarchy, precedence. And it's precisely this clash, public fame versus royal tradition, that would trigger a response from Prince Harry that no one expected. Now, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, is no stranger to public scrutiny. His life has been lived in the glare of cameras, whispers of paparazzi, and the relentless gaze of a world that sees him as both a royal and a man struggling with his identity. Today, though, all that tension and history converge in a single, explosive moment. As King Charles prepares to place the ceremonial sword on Beckham's shoulders, Harry's restraint evaporates. The exact details of what prompted him to shout are contested, but witnesses confirm the words left his mouth, raw and unfiltered. This was not a rehearsed performance, not a staged protest. This was Harry confronting a father he feels has consistently overlooked him, a system he feels has prioritized image over emotion, and perhaps an event he sees as emblematic of a deeper personal and familial betrayal. To understand this outburst, we need to consider the atmosphere of the day. Windsor Castle was alive with pomp and circumstance. Dignitaries, politicians, and close family members filled the room, their expressions a careful blend of anticipation and solemnity. The press, having arrived hours earlier, were positioned strategically, lenses ready to capture every movement, every smile, every slight twitch of the eyebrow. There is something inherently performative about a knighthood ceremony, the kneeling, the sword, the precise protocol. But beneath this surface, human emotions do not always conform to tradition. Tension can build silently, unnoticed by the untrained eye, until it erupts spectacularly. And that is exactly what happened with Harry. His shout reverberated through the hall, breaking centuries of decorum, leaving everyone, including King Charles, momentarily stunned. Imagine the internal conflict of Harry in that moment. He stands in a room that has always felt both familiar and alien. The grandeur, the history, the golden banners. It's his heritage, yet it has often felt like a cage. Every handshake, every bow, every measured smile represents a role he has been expected to play. And today, watching his father bestow honor on someone else, someone he perceives as a public favorite, someone celebrated globally, someone unlike him, triggers a wave of frustration and hurt that he cannot contain. "I'm your child, not him," is not just a statement. It's a demand, a plea, a declaration that echoes the struggle for recognition and emotional validation that has long defined his relationship with his father. This moment, while shocking in its immediate impact, is also part of a much longer story. For years, there have been reports, rumors, and subtle signs of strain within the royal family. From disagreements over media representation, to debates about who is worthy of certain honors, to private moments of tension that rarely see the light of day, the narrative of favoritism and estrangement has been quietly building. Publicly, Harry has maintained a composed exterior, often engaging in philanthropy and public appearances with a carefully curated demeanor. Privately, though, he has expressed frustration, hurt, and anger over perceived slights, both large and small. This outburst, then, is both a culmination of years of emotion and a dramatic signal to the world. The royal image of unity is more fragile than it appears. The significance of this day extends beyond personal drama. King Charles III's decision to knight David Beckham is itself a statement, reflecting both the monarchy's recognition of modern celebrity influence and the complex intersection of tradition and contemporary culture. While some see Beckham's knighthood as a deserved acknowledgement of his contributions to national pride, others, like Harry, see it as symbolic of misplaced priorities, a preference for charisma and fame over familial connection and personal recognition. This tension between tradition, public perception, and private emotion is what makes this story so compelling. The public may applaud Beckham's achievement, but the undercurrents of resentment, jealousy, and perceived favoritism are equally real and equally human. As the ceremony continues, cameras catch fleeting expressions, a subtle frown, a sharp intake of breath, a hand pressed against the chest in disbelief. Each micro-expression tells a story. Each glance is a silent negotiation of power, and each whispered word could ignite another spark. Witnesses report that Harry's body language was tense, restrained, yet electric with emotion. Observers on the sidelines whisper to one another, sensing that what they are witnessing is not just a routine ceremony, but a historical moment, a fissure in the royal facade made visible for all to see. And though the public may only see the shout as a brief, dramatic soundbite, those inside the castle understand its gravity. It is an emotional earthquake in a room built to maintain centuries of composure. Now, imagine the media frenzy that would follow. Social media erupted within minutes. Clips of Harry's shout went viral. Memes were created, pundits debated for hours, and every news outlet scrambled to contextualize the drama. Yet, while the world speculated about the meaning of Harry's words, only a few truly understood the layers behind them. The personal history, the sense of invisibility, the longing for acknowledgement, and the simmering resentment that had been building quietly over years. This is what makes the story resonate. It is not merely scandalous, it is deeply human. We have all experienced moments where our voices are drowned out by others, where recognition feels elusive, and where our identities seem overlooked. Harry's public outburst magnifies this universal struggle onto the global stage. And yet, as dramatic as the moment was, it was only the beginning. Behind closed doors, the palace erupted into a flurry of whispered conversations, hurried meetings, and urgent communications. Advisors debated how to manage the fallout, communications teams scrambled to draft statements, and family members weighed in, privately, on what this meant for the image of the monarchy. Beckham himself, despite his composure during the ceremony, reportedly felt a wave of unexpected tension. Was he caught in the middle of a family conflict he could not control? Did he understand the emotional weight behind Harry's shout? These questions, along with countless others, remain partially unanswered, creating the tension and suspense that has gripped global audiences. So why does this matter now? Because the story is far from over. While the cameras captured the immediate drama, the repercussions will unfold over weeks, months, and possibly years. The public loves a royal story, but they crave the human element, the emotion, the betrayal, the struggle for recognition, and the tension between public duty and private feeling. Harry's outburst, shocking as it was, provides a window into the human heart behind the crown, into a son's struggle for validation, and into the fragile veneer of tradition that can crack in an instant. And while some will remember the moment for the spectacle, others will recognize it as a turning point, one that could alter the trajectory of royal relationships forever. The morning of the investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle began like any other, at least on the surface. Sunlight spilled over the rolling hills and manicured gardens, gilding the stone walls of the castle in a soft, golden glow. Visitors filtered in, journalists set up their cameras, and courtiers adjusted the last of the ceremonial decorations. On paper, it was a day of tradition, honor, and recognition. In reality, it was a day that would be remembered not for the ceremony itself, but for the shockwaves that would ripple across the royal family and the world. Inside the castle, the atmosphere was taut. The grandeur of the setting, ornate tapestries, polished floors, and towering ceilings, seemed almost at odds with the tension simmering beneath the surface. The ceremony was to honor David Beckham, a global icon and former captain of England's national football team. He would receive the prestigious accolade of knighthood, an honor reserved for individuals who have made extraordinary contributions to the nation. Beckham, accustomed to the spotlight, exuded calm confidence as he adjusted his suit and straightened his tie. Yet even he could sense the undercurrent of unease, an invisible tension hovering just beneath the sparkling surface of royal pageantry. Prince Harry arrived later, escorted through the ornate hallways by aides who whispered hurried reminders of protocol. Every movement was scrutinized, every expression observed. Harry had known for weeks that this day would be difficult, that the combination of history, expectation, and familial tension might push him to his limits. But nothing could have prepared the room, or the world, for what he would do. The cameras rolled as King Charles III entered the Grand Hall. The weight of centuries seemed to press down on the ceremony, a silent reminder of tradition and duty. Guests stood as protocol demanded, their faces etched with solemnity. For those in attendance, it was a moment to witness history, a day to see the monarchy in action. But there was one individual whose focus was not on the ceremony itself. Harry's eyes flicked toward his father repeatedly, watching the careful placement of each ceremonial prop, noting every gesture, every nuance. And with each passing moment, the storm inside him grew stronger, more impossible to contain. David Beckham knelt before King Charles, the ceremonial sword raised high. The hush of expectation was almost deafening. Courtiers, staff, and guests held their breath, aware that the moment was both historic and intensely public. Every detail mattered. A misstep could reverberate across headlines for months, could become fodder for tabloids and social media alike. But for Harry, the pageantry felt hollow. The grandeur, the history, the meticulous choreography, all of it seemed irrelevant in comparison to the raw emotion he carried within him. The first signs of tension were subtle. A tightening of the jaw, a restless shift in his stance, a glance toward his father that carried more than just recognition. It carried years of resentment, hurt, and unmet expectations. The courtiers noticed. The photographers captured it. The public would see it later, when clips of the ceremony went viral. And then came the moment that changed everything. Harry's voice cut through the ceremonial quiet. The words, clear and raw, echoed in the grand hall. "I'm your child, not him." Gasps rose from the crowd. Journalists and onlookers froze mid-action, unsure if they had heard correctly. King Charles paused, sword hovering, eyes wide with shock. Beckham, kneeling before the monarch, blinked rapidly, caught between disbelief and the instinct to maintain composure. The carefully constructed facade of decorum crumbled, and for a moment, history seemed suspended in a single, explosive heartbeat. The impact of Harry's outburst was immediate. Social media erupted with clips of the shout, and news outlets scrambled to contextualize the event. but those inside the castle understood the complexity behind the words. This was not a simple act of rebellion or a moment of theatrical drama. It was the culmination of years of tension, personal, emotional, and deeply rooted in the complex dynamics of a family watched and judged by the world. To understand Harry's anger, it helps to examine the context of his relationship with his father. King Charles III, a monarch steeped in tradition and protocol, has long struggled to balance public expectation with private emotion. For Harry, the perception of favoritism and neglect had built over years of public scrutiny, personal loss, and a constant feeling of being overshadowed by his brother and the demands of the royal institution. The knighthood of Beckham, while deserved in many ways, became symbolic, a visible reminder that recognition and honor were being extended elsewhere, even as his own place in the family hierarchy felt uncertain and precarious. The ceremony continued, though not without tremors. Courtiers whispered to one another, trying to regain composure and control. Advisors tugged at robes and offered hurried reminders of protocol. Meanwhile, Harry's outburst lingered in the air, a living thing, shaping the mood of the room and setting the stage for subsequent tension. It was a moment that would ripple beyond Windsor Castle, affecting not just public perception but also the internal dynamics of the royal family. Beckham, ever the professional, managed to maintain composure. His training under intense public scrutiny had prepared him for pressure, but nothing could have fully prepared him for being caught in the middle of a public familial dispute at one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. The knighthood ceremony, a milestone in any life, became a flashpoint in a narrative that involved not just recognition, but deep emotional currents, unspoken grievances, and the complexities of a father-son relationship broadcast globally. Outside the castle, the world reacted in real time. Clips of Harry's shout spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Memes appeared within minutes. Pundits speculated endlessly. Was this a premeditated protest or an impulsive outburst? Was it evidence of a deep rift or just a momentary flare of emotion? The questions were endless, but one thing was clear. The royal narrative had been disrupted in a way that would resonate for years to come. Inside the castle, however, the implications were immediate and tangible. Advisors debated the proper response. Staff members attempted to maintain calm in front of the cameras. Courtiers whispered about protocol, precedents, and the potential fallout. Even King Charles, trained in decades of public appearances, had to process not just the public embarrassment, but the personal significance of the words. In a single utterance, Harry had laid bare a tension that had long simmered beneath the polished surface of royal life. What's more, Harry's shout highlighted a broader tension within the monarchy, the struggle between tradition and modernity, protocol and personal expression. While the ceremony itself adhered to centuries-old customs, Harry's intervention reminded everyone that no tradition could fully contain human emotion. Recognition, attention, and validation are powerful forces, and when they are perceived to be denied, even the most disciplined individuals may erupt. This incident also raised questions about public perception and media framing. To the casual observer, it might appear as a dramatic outburst, a viral moment designed for shock value. But those closer to the palace understood that it was a reflection of a long-standing dynamic, a narrative of identity, recognition, and the struggle for personal relevance within an institution that prioritizes hierarchy, protocol, and the maintenance of a pristine public image. As the ceremony concluded, the echoes of Harry's words continued to reverberate. The knighthood was conferred, David Beckham rose from his kneeling position, and cameras captured smiles, bows, and handshakes. Yet beneath the smiles, the ceremony had been forever altered. For Harry, the day had become a defining moment, one that would linger in his mind and in public discourse for months to come. For King Charles, it was a moment that demanded reflection on the balance between duty, familial responsibility, and personal acknowledgement. For Beckham, it was a day that would forever be linked to one of the most dramatic royal outbursts in modern history. And while the world buzzed with commentary, speculation, and viral clips, a deeper story was unfolding behind the gilded walls. A story of private conversations, whispered grievances, and emotions that no camera could fully capture. The public had seen only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface, the dynamics were far more complex and far more human. Few names resonate globally like David Beckham. From the streets of East London to the glittering stadiums of Europe, Beckham's journey has been one of skill, ambition, and relentless pursuit of excellence. But as he knelt before King Charles III, waiting for the ceremonial sword to descend upon his shoulders, the world rarely considered the personal story behind the public persona. This was not just a knighthood. It was a symbol, a recognition of decades of dedication, but also a catalyst for controversy that would see the royal family's private dramas spill into the public eye. Beckham's rise to fame began humbly. Born into a working-class family, his early life was shaped by discipline, ambition, and an unwavering focus on football. Unlike other stars born into privilege, Beckham's early triumphs were earned through sheer determination. He trained relentlessly, often practicing free kicks in empty streets long after others had gone home. Each goal scored in youth leagues carried him one step closer to professional recognition. And yet, even at an early age, he understood the power of image, charisma, and public perception, qualities that would later define him as much as his athletic skill. When Beckham joined Manchester United, his talent was undeniable. Fans adored his pinpoint crosses, his unstoppable free kicks, and the seemingly effortless precision with which he commanded the field. But talent alone does not forge a global icon. Beckham's rise was also marked by media attention, endorsements, and a meticulous cultivation of public persona. He became a bridge between sports and celebrity culture, a figure whose name and image transcended the football pitch. Yet, even with such fame, the knighthood ceremony presented him with a new challenge, navigating the delicate world of royal protocol while caught in the crossfire of a family feud he had no part in creating. The knighthood itself carries weight beyond the shiny medals and ceremonial sword. Traditionally, knighthood is awarded to individuals who have rendered extraordinary service to the nation, either through military achievement, arts, or significant public contribution. Beckham's recognition was a reflection of his contributions to sports, charity, and national pride. Yet, in a modern world dominated by celebrity culture, some critics questioned the decision. Was Beckham truly a deserving candidate? Or did his global fame make him the perfect candidate for a ceremonial nod that would capture public imagination? This tension between achievement and perception would be magnified by the events of that day, particularly by Prince Harry's dramatic outburst. For Harry, Beckham represented a paradox. On one hand, he is undeniably accomplished, a figure admired worldwide. On the other hand, his prominence as a celebrity appeared to overshadow the recognition that Harry felt he deserved, not just from the public, but from his own family. This perception of favoritism, whether justified or not, fueled Harry's frustration. The knighthood ceremony became a lightning rod, bringing to the surface decades of complex familial dynamics, including unresolved feelings of neglect, identity struggles, and a longing for validation from the very father who now stood bestowing honors on another man. Beckham, meanwhile, remained composed. The training, discipline, and public exposure that had defined his career were on full display. He understood the gravity of the moment and the intense scrutiny surrounding it. Yet, even he could not predict the human drama about to unfold. The juxtaposition of his personal triumph with Harry's raw emotional outburst created a scene that was part ceremony, part theater, and entirely unpredictable. Here was a man at the peak of his career, being celebrated for decades of hard work, and yet inadvertently becoming a pawn in a story much larger than himself. As the ceremony progressed, glimpses of Beckham's humility became evident. In private, he had prepared for this moment not merely as a display of personal achievement, but as an acknowledgement of the many who had supported him along the way. Coaches, teammates, family members. He carried their efforts silently with him as he knelt before the king. Yet the public moment demanded more than gratitude. It demanded poise, decorum, and the ability to navigate the emotional currents swirling invisibly around him. And those currents, it turned out, were far stronger than anyone had anticipated. Beckham's reputation as a consummate professional was tested the instant Harry's voice pierced the ceremonial calm. The world would later see only a split second of reaction, a blink, a startled pause, a subtle tightening of the jaw. But in those fleeting moments, Beckham processed not just the shock of the words, but the weight of their implications. He was now positioned not just as a celebrated sports figure, but as an unwitting participant in a historic royal drama, one that would dominate headlines and social media feeds for days, weeks, and potentially months. It's worth noting that knighthood ceremonies, while rich in tradition, are not immune to human emotion. Every person present, from monarch to guest, carries personal histories, hidden resentments, and private anxieties. In this case, the intersection of Beckham's celebrity, Harry's familial grievances, and the symbolic power of royal recognition created a volatile mix. One wrong glance, one suppressed sigh, one raised eyebrow, and the delicate balance could, and did, shift dramatically. The grandeur of Windsor Castle became a stage not only for tradition, but for unfiltered human emotion. The public's fascination with Beckham and his knighthood was amplified by social media. Within moments of the ceremony, clips of the event were shared across platforms. Headlines splashed with the story. Prince Harry shouts during Beckham's knighthood. Royal outburst shocks the world. The rapid spread of information, much of it speculative, intensified the pressure on everyone involved. Beckham, trained to handle global scrutiny, had to navigate this new dimension of public attention, one that combined both celebration and controversy. Meanwhile, Harry's emotional eruption became the lens through which the world interpreted the entire event. Beckham's achievement, momentous as it was now inseparably linked to his son's cry for recognition. Even among the royal staff, reactions varied. Some were sympathetic to Harry's emotions, recognizing the strain of living under the public eye. Others viewed the outburst as a breach of decorum, a public disruption that demanded careful management. Beckham, caught in the middle, had to balance the dignity of the ceremony with the unexpected human drama. It was an unprecedented moment, a collision of celebrity culture and royal tradition that left no one unaffected. Beyond the immediate spectacle, the knighthood also underscored broader societal questions. What does recognition truly mean? Who is deemed worthy and why? How do public figures navigate the line between personal achievement and institutional validation? For Beckham, the answer was straightforward: decades of dedication, public service, and consistent performance. For Harry, however, it was far more complicated, a narrative intertwined with familial expectations, emotional needs, and a lifetime of perceived oversight. Beckham's role in this story is paradoxical. He is celebrated, honored, and recognized for his achievements. Yet in a single moment, he becomes a silent witness to a far more dramatic tale, that of a son asserting his identity, demanding recognition, and confronting a father he feels has long prioritized image over intimacy. Beckham's composure, discipline, and humility contrast sharply with the raw human emotion that unfolds around him. This juxtaposition of calm professionalism and explosive personal drama is what makes the day unforgettable, both for those present and for the millions watching around the world. As the ceremony drew to a close, Beckham rose from his kneeling position, his knighthood officially conferred. The cameras captured the handshake with the king, the ceremonial bows, and the polite smiles exchanged with other dignitaries. To the casual observer, it appeared to be a seamless, historic moment of honor and celebration. But for those attuned to the underlying drama, the day was anything but ordinary. The emotional reverberations of Harry's outburst lingered in the air, coloring every interaction, every glance, every whispered comment among the courtiers. And while Beckham might have thought the hardest part was over, the day was far from finished. The global media had already begun dissecting every second, every expression, every word. The world was watching, speculating, and judging. Beckham, despite his calm exterior, had become a pivotal figure in a drama he could not control, a story that intertwined celebrity, royalty, and human emotion in ways no one had anticipated. The British royal family is renowned for its unwavering adherence to tradition, etiquette, and protocol. Every bow, every smile, every handshake is carefully measured, honed through centuries of practice. It's a world where appearances matter as much as actions, where a fleeting glance can convey approval or disdain, and where public composure is expected no matter the turmoil beneath the surface. But that day at Windsor Castle, during the investiture of David Beckham, The meticulous choreography of royal etiquette collided spectacularly with raw, unfiltered emotion, and the result was unforgettable. The ceremony was meant to be a testament to grace, honor, and history. King Charles III, adorned in the full regalia of his office, stood poised, the ceremonial sword glinting under the castle's grand chandeliers. Beckham, kneeling before the monarch, maintained the calm composure that had defined his decades-long public career. Around them, dignitaries, aides, and courtiers observed quietly, their expressions a careful balance of reverence and attention. Every step of the investiture, from the timing of the bows to the placement of hands, was rehearsed and meticulously observed. For outsiders, the scene might have seemed seamless, a picture-perfect moment of ceremony. But for those attuned to the subtle dynamics of royal life, tension had been quietly building long before Harry's explosive interruption. Prince Harry's entry into this environment was anything but seamless. The royal protocols that he had grown up under were designed to maintain a facade of unity, dignity, and control. These protocols dictate behavior down to the smallest detail. How one walks into a room, how one stands during a speech, even the angle of a bow. Such rules are meant to preserve centuries of tradition, to project continuity and stability to the public. Yet, for Harry, they represented something else entirely, an invisible cage, a structure that demanded composure even when emotions were raw, a system that prioritized image over feeling. As he positioned himself among the other guests, it was clear that the weight of history pressed upon him, amplifying his internal turmoil. The build-up to his outburst was subtle but unmistakable. Observers noted that Harry's eyes flicked repeatedly toward his father. His hands, clasped tightly in front of him, betrayed a tension that no amount of protocol could mask. Small gestures, shifting weight from one foot to another, a deep sigh barely audible, a fleeting grimace, hinted at the storm brewing within. These micro-expressions, invisible to many, were magnified in significance by the high-stakes environment of the investiture. Each movement, each glance, was laden with meaning. A son navigating the expectations of tradition while grappling with the emotional weight of perceived neglect and favoritism. The contrast between ceremony and emotion became even more pronounced when Beckham knelt before King Charles. The act itself is highly symbolic, a gesture of humility and respect deeply rooted in historical precedent. Yet, as the sword descended and the room held its collective breath, Harry's suppressed emotions reached a breaking point. The shouting of, "I'm your child, not him," was not an isolated event. It was the culmination of a lifetime of unspoken grievances, pent-up frustration, and the human need for recognition and validation. It was a raw, authentic moment that shattered the meticulously constructed veneer of royal etiquette. This collision of protocol and emotion underscores a fundamental tension within the monarchy, the expectation of composure versus the inevitability of human feeling. Royal life demands a performance of restraint, yet no amount of training or tradition can fully contain a person's inner turmoil. Prince Harry's outburst illustrates this perfectly. On the surface, it appears shocking, even dramatic. But underneath, it is profoundly human, a son asserting his identity, a cry for acknowledgement, a demand for recognition that had long been denied in subtle but significant ways. The Grand Hall of Windsor Castle, with its centuries of tradition and ceremony, suddenly became a stage for human authenticity, raw and unpolished. Observers within the room were quick to react. Courtiers exchanged nervous glances, trying to anticipate the next move, while aides leaned in, whispering urgent reminders of protocol. The juxtaposition of Harry's explosive emotion against the backdrop of centuries-old tradition created a unique and tense dynamic. For the attending dignitaries, the moment was uncomfortable, disorienting. For the press, it was gold, a perfect storm of royal pageantry disrupted by unpredictable human drama. The tension was palpable, not just physically in the room but emotionally, as the subtle reverberations of Harry's words echoed among those present. It is also important to note the symbolic weight of this moment. In royal culture, public gestures carry meaning far beyond the immediate. A bow, a nod, a handshake, these acts signify respect, hierarchy, and status. By shouting, Harry disrupted this carefully calibrated system, challenging not only the ceremony itself, but also the implicit hierarchy it represented. His words implied a critique, a declaration that recognition should be earned not just through public display or protocol, but through genuine familial acknowledgement. In that instant, the centuries-old dance of etiquette collided with the immediacy of personal truth. Beckham's presence in this high-stakes environment further complicated the situation. As a man accustomed to global attention and constant scrutiny, Beckham understood the optics of public behavior. Yet, even he could not fully anticipate being placed at the center of a familial clash with centuries of historical weight behind it. The contrast between Beckham's disciplined composure and Harry's emotional eruption highlights a fascinating dynamic: the intersection of public professionalism and private human reality. One man's lifelong training to maintain image collided with another's urgent need to assert identity and emotion, creating a moment that would resonate far beyond the castle walls. The audience at home, unaware of the intricate details of royal protocol, may have seen only the shout, the gasps, the fleeting expressions of shock. But those who understand the mechanics of the monarchy recognize the significance. Every gesture in the royal household is deliberate, every word measured, every appearance meticulously orchestrated. The breach of protocol, however momentary, carries consequences not merely for the individuals involved, but for the institution itself. Harry's interruption was therefore not just a personal statement, but a public disruption, a moment that challenged centuries of ceremonial expectation while exposing the vulnerability inherent in any system reliant on human discipline. As the ceremony continued, the tension lingered. Courtiers whispered in hushed tones, attempting to restore order and maintain the appearance of control. Harry's gaze remained fixed, charged with emotion and unspoken demands. The ceremonial script, rehearsed countless times, was now imbued with a new energy, an unpredictable element that no training or protocol could contain. Every movement, every gesture, every word spoken by King Charles or Beckham carried additional weight, shaped by the knowledge that the carefully maintained equilibrium had been irreversibly altered. This juxtaposition, ritual against reality, protocol against passion, is what makes this moment historically significant. It illuminates the inherent tension between the monarchy's need for order and the human realities that inevitably disrupt it. Prince Harry's shout was not merely a spectacle. It was a manifestation of the conflict between institutional expectation and individual experience. It reminded the world that behind the gold, the pomp, and the ceremony, there exists a human story. A son seeking recognition, a father navigating duty and emotion, a public figure caught in the crossfire. Even after the shout faded, the aftershocks continued. Media outlets scrambled to contextualize the event. Social media erupted with speculation, commentary, and analysis. Courtiers worked behind the scenes to contain the fallout, while private conversations began to unfold, attempting to navigate the complex emotional landscape laid bare in that instant. For Harry, the act of breaking protocol had been both cathartic and consequential, a declaration that his voice could no longer be ignored. For the royal family, it posed a dilemma: how to reconcile centuries of tradition with the undeniable force of human emotion now on full display. And while the public might have been drawn to the drama of a royal outburst, the deeper narrative was far more compelling. It was a story of identity, of recognition, of the struggle between the image the world sees and the reality that lies beneath. It was about a son asserting his humanity in a world designed to suppress it, and about a family grappling with the consequences of decades-long dynamics suddenly brought into stark relief. The royal family has always projected an image of unity, duty, and decorum. To the public, they are the embodiment of tradition, steadfast in their roles and devoted to the institutions they represent. But behind the polished exterior, there are fissures, hidden, subtle, yet powerful enough to shape relationships, decisions, and moments like the investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle. Prince Harry's outburst that day, shouting, "I'm your child, not him," was not merely an isolated act of impulsive emotion. It was the culmination of years of tension, unresolved grievances, and a deeply complicated father-son relationship that the world rarely gets to witness. To understand the gravity of that moment, one must step back into Harry's life from the beginning. Born into the public eye, every milestone, his first steps, his first day at school, his graduation, even the loss of his mother, was documented, analyzed, and broadcast. Growing up alongside his brother, Prince William, Harry experienced both love and comparison. From an early age, subtle differences in treatment were magnified by the intense scrutiny of the media and the palace. Attention from his father, while present, was often overshadowed by duty, protocol, and the prioritization of the heir. This is not uncommon in royal dynamics, where succession and duty dominate. Yet for Harry, it fostered a sense of being second in more ways than one, a perception that would linger into adulthood and play a significant role in the events at Windsor Castle. The relationship between Harry and King Charles has always been complex. Charles, trained in decades of public expectation and royal responsibility, has a deep understanding of protocol, image, and perception. Emotion, while not absent, has often been expressed through gestures, duties, and moments of subtle support rather than overt declarations of affection. Harry, in contrast, is more visceral, emotional, and outspoken. The clash of these personalities, traditional restraint versus raw emotion, has been well documented in biographies, interviews, and insider accounts. The investiture ceremony for Beckham acted as a trigger, bringing all the accumulated tension into sharp, undeniable focus. Over the years, there have been several incidents that hinted at a growing divide. Private disagreements over media representation, public appearances, and family prioritization created a foundation of tension. Harry's outspoken nature often clashed with the monarchy's expectations, leading to moments of frustration on both sides. While these incidents were rarely publicized in detail, insiders confirmed that they created an emotional backdrop for moments like the investiture. Harry's feelings of neglect were compounded by the perception that his accomplishments, both personal and charitable, were undervalued or ignored, particularly when compared to public figures celebrated for other achievements, such as David Beckham. Psychologists and royal experts have noted that this dynamic is common in families where public duty competes with private relationships. Children of high-profile parents often experience a tension between public expectation and personal desire for recognition. In Harry's case, this was magnified by the global spotlight, the intense media scrutiny, and the constant comparison to his brother. Every action, every statement, every appearance became a measure of worth, not just in the eyes of the public, but in the private calculus of familial approval. The investiture ceremony, while celebratory in nature, became a stage upon which these long-standing emotional undercurrents would erupt. Adding to the complexity is the subtle influence of favoritism, or perceived favoritism. Reports and insider accounts suggest that King Charles has, over the years, exhibited differential attention toward William, the heir, versus Harry, the younger son. While perhaps unintentional, these differences were keenly felt by Harry, shaping his perception of his place within the family. The knighthood of Beckham, a widely admired public figure, may have inadvertently reinforced these feelings. To an outsider, Beckham's recognition was purely ceremonial. To Harry, it symbolized the prioritization of public admiration over familial acknowledgement, a reminder that the approval he sought from his father had often seemed conditional or elusive. The day of the investiture, these tensions were highly charged. Harry arrived with a mixture of pride, anxiety, and a simmering undercurrent of frustration. He understood the significance of the ceremony, the dignity it required, and the public attention it would attract. Yet, the anticipation of another figure receiving recognition while his own feelings of emotional neglect remained unresolved created a volatile emotional environment. Every glance at King Charles, every moment of protocol, every word spoken in the Grand Hall acted as a spark to a fire long smoldering beneath the surface. It is essential to recognize the cumulative effect of these years of subtle neglect and emotional complexity. Prince Harry's outburst was not impulsive in the sense of being sudden and without context. It was a reaction conditioned by decades of feeling overlooked, undervalued, and constrained by expectation. The knighthood ceremony, with its pomp and celebration, acted as both a literal and symbolic stage for this confrontation. Harry's words, while shocking to the public and even to many insiders, were a crystallization of a deeply human need to be seen, acknowledged, and recognized by the parent whose approval had always mattered most. Furthermore, the public nature of the outburst added another layer of significance. In royal families, most grievances remain private, handled behind closed doors with discretion. By voicing his feelings publicly, Harry bypassed centuries of tradition, asserting both his independence and his emotional truth. This act, while seen by many as dramatic, highlights a tension between the monarchy's adherence to decorum and the reality of human emotion. It also underscores a broader question. What happens when personal grievances collide with centuries-old protocols designed to suppress individual expression in favor of institutional image? The ripple effects within the royal family were immediate. Staff members and advisors scrambled to contain the situation, discussing how to address both the public and private fallout. King Charles, for all his experience, had to process not just the breach of etiquette, but the emotional weight behind the words. Courtiers whispered, trying to decipher whether Harry's outburst was a fleeting moment of emotion or a harbinger of deeper confrontation to come. This ambiguity, between public shock and private concern, added a tense, almost cinematic quality to the unfolding events. Harry's actions that day also highlighted the generational differences within the royal family. Charles, trained in restraint and accustomed to the slow evolution of public perception, approaches conflict with measured responses. Harry, shaped by a world of instant media, social scrutiny, and a heightened awareness of global visibility, reacts with immediacy and emotional transparency. This collision of approaches is not just a personal struggle. It represents a broader tension between tradition and modernity within the monarchy. The investiture, while ostensibly about Beckham's knighthood, inadvertently became a microcosm of these generational and philosophical differences. Even the other family members present felt the weight of the moment. Reports suggest that Prince William, often seen as the stabilizing presence within the royal household, observed the interaction with a mixture of concern, frustration, and awareness that the public's gaze could not be ignored. Courtiers and advisors debated whether to intervene, how to manage optics, and what statements, if any, should be prepared for the media. Every action was now layered with multiple considerations: emotional, symbolic, and reputational. The Grand Hall of Windsor Castle became not just a ceremonial space, but a stage where centuries of family history and emotion intersected dramatically with contemporary public life. What makes this story resonate beyond the royal sphere is its universality. Harry's feelings of invisibility, frustration, and desire for acknowledgement are emotions most people have experienced in some form. What differs is the context, the stakes, the visibility, and the centuries of tradition that amplify the consequences. The moment when he shouted, "I'm your child, not him," captures the human struggle for validation in the most extreme conditions imaginable: a son seeking recognition, a father navigating duty, and a world watching every second. And yet, as dramatic as the outburst was, it was only a surface manifestation of a deeper, more intricate relationship. The hidden rift between father and son was not created in a single day. It had been forged over decades of missed signals, subtle comparisons, and unspoken grievances. The investiture ceremony acted as a catalyst, bringing emotions long buried to the forefront in a moment of undeniable intensity. It was a moment that would be replayed countless times across television screens, social media feeds, and news outlets worldwide, a moment that seemed almost cinematic in its intensity. But to fully understand what happened when Prince Harry's voice pierced the air at Windsor Castle, it's essential to reconstruct the events with all the nuance, tension, and emotion of the hour. This was not a simple outburst. It was the dramatic culmination of years of personal conflict, public scrutiny, and a lifetime of unspoken grievances finally finding voice. The Grand Hall was alive with ceremony, its ornate walls reflecting the soft glow of chandeliers. Courtiers, dignitaries, and staff filled the room in neat rows, faces a study in polite composure. Cameras were poised to capture the precise moment King Charles III would knight David Beckham, a moment steeped in history and protocol. For decades, investiture ceremonies had followed an exact script: a pause, a bow, the ceremonial sword descending, a handshake, a smile, and applause. And for decades, those scripts had been executed flawlessly, with minor deviations quickly corrected by aides and staff. Today, however, that script would be irrevocably broken. Prince Harry stood among the assembled guests, his posture tense, his hands clenched subtly. Observers would later describe a storm of emotion brewing just beneath the surface, a mixture of frustration, hurt, and a deeply personal sense of injustice. Every glance toward King Charles was loaded with meaning, every breath measured against the silent expectations of the room. For Harry, the moment was more than just about protocol. It was about recognition, identity, and the long-simmering tension between a son and his father. David Beckham knelt before the king, eyes focused, expression calm and dignified. He had been through countless high-pressure moments, on stadium fields with thousands of fans watching, in photo shoots scrutinized by global media, and in countless interviews where a single misstep could draw criticism. Yet nothing could have prepared him for being in the center of a confrontation that was deeply personal, familial, and entirely unscripted. The juxtaposition was stark. Beckham, calm and composed, following protocol to the letter. Harry, a storm contained within a human frame, on the verge of eruption. As King Charles raised the ceremonial sword, the entire room seemed to hold its collective breath. There is a silence in such moments, an almost tangible weight that presses upon everyone present. It's a silence steeped in history, tradition, and expectation. The sword hovers above the kneeling figure, poised to mark an official recognition that has been centuries in the making. And in that silence, Prince Harry's emotions could no longer be contained. "I'm your child, not him." The words exploded from Harry's mouth. Sharp, unyielding, unforgettable. Gasps rose from the crowd, a collective intake of breath that seemed to reverberate through the stone walls. The ceremonial pause, the moment meant to immortalize Beckham's achievement, was shattered, replaced with raw human emotion. For a few seconds, the world seemed to tilt. Cameras, poised for a graceful bow and ceremonial strike, captured the shock on faces, the widening of eyes, the momentary disbelief that no one, even the most seasoned courtiers, could ignore. The immediate impact was electric. King Charles froze mid-motion, the ceremonial sword suspended in the air as his eyes met Harry's. There was a pause, a brief, almost surreal stillness in which history, emotion, and duty collided. Beckham, kneeling before the king, blinked rapidly, caught between disbelief and the need to maintain composure. The room, steeped in centuries of etiquette, had become a stage for raw, unfiltered human emotion. Every movement, every glance, every gasp held weight. Nothing in the rehearsed script of the day could account for a son's public declaration of identity, recognition, and protest. Inside the room, reactions varied. Courtiers whispered urgently, attempting to regain composure and control of the situation. Advisors leaned in, whispering hurried instructions and reminders of protocol. Guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing that the moment was historically significant, even if they couldn't fully articulate why. The juxtaposition was striking, a centuries-old ritual disrupted by an act of human defiance, a public break from tradition that sent ripples through both the royal household and the media outside the castle walls. From Harry's perspective, the words were not merely an outburst. They were a necessary declaration. For years, he had lived in the shadow of expectation, comparison, and perceived favoritism. His accomplishments, public service, and personal growth had often felt secondary to the narratives constructed around others. The knighthood of David Beckham, while a moment of deserved recognition, symbolized in Harry's mind the prioritization of external validation over familial acknowledgement. His shout, a sudden and powerful assertion, demanded recognition of a truth that had long been ignored. Observers would later comment on Harry's body language in that critical moment, clenched fists subtly at his sides, eyes sharp with intensity, posture rigid yet alive with barely contained energy. Every nuance communicated more than words alone could convey. To the trained eye, it was a study in emotional expression under extreme pressure, a man navigating the impossible balance between familial loyalty, personal identity, and public scrutiny. It was an act of courage, confrontation, and vulnerability, all compressed into a single explosive statement. The media, though still outside the castle, was quick to respond. Within minutes, clips of the shout were circulating online, accompanied by speculation, commentary, and a flood of reactions. Social media users dissected every detail: Harry's tone, the timing, the reaction of King Charles, the blink of Beckham's eyes. Headlines splashed across screens. Prince Harry breaks royal protocol. I'm your child, not him. Royal outburst stuns Windsor. Royal ceremony interrupted by son's public demand. The virality of the moment ensured that the private dynamics of the royal family were suddenly a matter of global conversation, amplifying the significance of the outburst far beyond the walls of Windsor Castle. Beckham's response was a masterclass in composure. Despite the intensity of the moment, he maintained his dignity, completing the ceremonial gestures required. A slight shift of posture, a nod to the king, and a restrained, polite smile ensured that the knighthood remained official and ceremonial, even as the atmosphere was charged with emotional tension. To the public, it appeared as if the ceremony had resumed seamlessly, but insiders would later reveal the silent calculations, subtle adjustments, and private murmurs that occurred in the seconds following Harry's declaration. What makes this moment extraordinary is the interplay of tradition and human authenticity. Royal etiquette demands poise, discipline, and the suppression of personal emotion. Yet Harry's outburst reminds us that no matter how strict the rules, the human heart cannot always be contained. The collision of centuries-old protocol with raw, unfiltered emotion created a spectacle that was part history, part drama, and entirely unpredictable. It is a moment that demonstrates the fragile balance of monarchy. The veneer of perfection rests atop the very human complexities of emotion, ambition, and personal identity. The implications for the royal family were immediate and far-reaching. Advisors debated how to respond, weighing the need for discretion against the inevitability of global media coverage. Courtiers whispered about potential repercussions, both public and private. King Charles, experienced in navigating crises of protocol and image, had to process not only the immediate shock, but also the broader implications for his relationship with his son. In that instant, a centuries-old institution was reminded that human emotion, especially when amplified by personal history, can disrupt even the most carefully controlled ceremonial moments. Harry's shout also highlights the broader human drama beneath the surface of royal life. We often perceive royalty as distant, composed, and nearly superhuman, insulated from ordinary emotion. But in reality, they experience fear, frustration, grief, and longing just as anyone else does. What differentiates Harry's act is the combination of visibility, context, and the intensity of personal history. The words, "I'm your child, not him," are simultaneously a public declaration, a personal plea, and a symbolic challenge to an institution designed to maintain distance and order. Even after the shout, the echoes lingered. The ceremony proceeded, but the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. Subtle glances, whispered instructions, and careful gestures reflected the underlying tension now present. The room had transformed from a purely ceremonial space into a stage where centuries of expectation, tradition, and personal emotion collided. The world would later see only snippets of the drama, but those inside the castle understood its significance. And yet, as dramatic as this moment was, it was only the beginning. What followed behind the scenes, the private conversations, the whispered warnings, the calculated decisions, would reveal even more about the fragility of royal protocol, the complexity of familial relationships, and the human consequences of centuries of tradition. The instant Prince Harry's voice echoed through Windsor Castle, the world outside began to shift. What had started as a carefully orchestrated investiture ceremony, an event designed to honor David Beckham and showcase centuries of royal tradition, transformed into a story of intrigue, scandal, and global fascination. Within seconds, whispers inside the castle were amplified 1,000-fold by social media, leaks, and the relentless appetite of the public for royal drama. For Harry, King Charles, Beckham, and the royal household, the event had crossed from ceremonial to catastrophic in the eyes of the world. As the cameras captured the moment, courtiers scrambled to assess the damage. The palace has long maintained strict control over public perception, issuing statements with meticulous care to avoid misinterpretation. But the immediacy of modern media rendered centuries of careful protocol vulnerable. Live streams, handheld cameras, and instant clips meant that every facial expression, every word, every micromovement could, and would, be dissected globally. The phrase, "I'm your child, not him," spread faster than anyone in the palace could have imagined, becoming the headline story within minutes. Social media, as always, was a double-edged sword. On one side, it amplified the spectacle, turning Harry's emotional declaration into a viral phenomenon. Memes appeared almost immediately, some humorous, some critical, some sympathetic. Twitter exploded with thousands of reactions per second, each comment a microcosm of public opinion, outrage, curiosity, disbelief, empathy, and even satire. Instagram posts dissected the ceremony frame by frame, highlighting Harry's expressions, Beckham's reaction, and the fleeting look on King Charles's face. TikTok users recreated the moment, sometimes in jest, sometimes in artistic homage, and in doing so, the event transcended news media to become part of pop culture instantly. Leakers inside the palace and media insiders began piecing together narratives. Some claimed Harry had been simmering for months, even years, over what he perceived as favoritism. Others framed the moment as a spontaneous, impulsive act that revealed the deeply human side of royalty, usually concealed beneath protocol. Every interpretation carried its own bias, its own spin, and every story fueled the others, creating a cycle of speculation and rumor that was impossible to contain. Palace aides were reportedly in panic mode, convening emergency meetings to decide how, or whether, to respond. Should a statement be released to explain the outburst? Should they allow it to fade naturally? Every choice risked escalating the scandal further. Meanwhile, mainstream media outlets pounced. News anchors replayed the clip on loop, dissecting every syllable and pause. Opinion columns debated the implications, a son's cry for recognition versus breach of royal decorum. International media framed the event in their own cultural context, often sensationalizing it to maximize clicks and engagement. Headlines from across the globe reflected a mixture of fascination, judgment, and incredulity. Prince Harry disrupts royal ceremony. Beckham caught in royal family storm. King Charles faces unexpected son drama at investiture. The convergence of traditional and digital media ensured that the moment became unforgettable in public consciousness. The palace itself faced the dual pressures of internal and external chaos. Courtiers and advisors were tasked with damage control while simultaneously respecting the ceremonial decorum that had been violated. Leaks were inevitable in an environment where emotions ran high, where staff members witnessed every nuance, and where media attention made secrecy nearly impossible. Some leaks were accidental. Offhand comments passed between aides. Others were deliberate, designed to shape public perception, gain leverage, or simply release tension from an unprecedentedly stressful environment. In either case, the result was the same. The world learned almost instantly what had occurred inside the Grand Hall, and the palace was forced to grapple with a crisis in real time. Beckham, at the center of the storm, faced an unexpected dilemma. He had trained for pressure, thousands of football matches, international scrutiny, sponsorship obligations, but nothing could prepare him for being thrust into a royal family controversy in which he played no active role. Every reaction, every expression, every gesture would be scrutinized for signs of complicity, discomfort, or disapproval. Reports indicate that he remained composed, maintaining the ceremonial expectations of the investiture while privately acknowledging the tension that had erupted around him. Even so, being at the epicenter of a viral royal incident altered his public image in ways he could not have anticipated. Meanwhile, Harry's outburst fueled speculation about his relationship with the king. Commentators revisited past interviews, public appearances, and royal biographies to contextualize the moment. Analysts pointed to long-standing patterns: Harry's outspoken nature, his past frustrations with media coverage, and his relationship with his brother. Psychological experts weighed in, highlighting the stress of living under global scrutiny, the impact of perceived favoritism, and the human need for validation from one's parents. Every facet of Harry's life became fair game for analysis, a reminder that in the digital age, private emotions can quickly become public spectacle. The speed at which the story spread also amplified its emotional impact. Traditional media, which once dictated the flow of information, could no longer control the narrative. Tweets, Instagram posts, live streams, and reaction videos circulated globally in real time. Within minutes, millions were commenting, debating, and forming opinions, turning a single shouted phrase into a worldwide conversation. Memes, parodies, and commentary videos proliferated, blending humor, outrage, and empathy in ways that traditional coverage alone could not achieve. The viral nature of social media ensured that the moment would not fade quietly. It would become part of the cultural lexicon, cited and referenced repeatedly in the days and weeks to follow. Inside the palace, the mood was tense. Staff members reportedly moved quickly to contain leaks, clarify timelines, and manage communications. Advisors debated whether to release statements, which phrasing would mitigate fallout, and how to maintain the dignity of both the royal family and the ceremony itself. Every decision was complicated by the immediacy of global attention. Every misstep could exacerbate the situation. Meanwhile, family members themselves were forced to navigate the fallout privately, balancing personal feelings, public perception, and the intricate expectations of centuries-old tradition. Perhaps most striking was how the public interpreted Harry's outburst. For some, it was a courageous act, a rare glimpse into the human side of royalty. For others, it was a breach of decorum, a scandalous display unbecoming of a prince. And yet, the conversation sparked by the event went beyond mere judgment. It ignited broader discussions about the pressures of living in the public eye, the balance between duty and emotion, and the complex interplay of family, recognition, and identity. Social media amplified these conversations exponentially, providing platforms for millions to voice opinions, relate personal experiences, and engage in cultural critique. As the storm of media attention and social speculation continued to build, the palace faced an unprecedented challenge. The convergence of leaks, scandals, and social media dynamics had created a situation in which the actions of one individual, Prince Harry, could dominate global headlines, overshadow ceremonial achievements, and spark endless debate about the royal family's inner workings. The consequences were unpredictable, the reactions varied, and the pressure to respond immediate. And yet, amid the chaos, the personal dynamics remained at the heart of the story. Harry's shout, while instantly sensationalized, was rooted in human emotion, a desire for recognition, a plea for validation, and a declaration of identity. Beckham's dignified response, while understated, contrasted sharply with the storm surrounding him, highlighting the intersection of public performance, personal composure, and the unexpected intrusion of private emotion into a formal ceremony. The combination of viral exposure, family dynamics, and historical significance created a moment that would not only define the day, but also shape public perception of the royal family for months to come. From the outside, David Beckham's life has always seemed meticulously curated, polished to perfection, a seamless blend of athletic achievement, celebrity glamour, and philanthropic acclaim. Yet, the investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle thrust him into a situation that even he could not have fully anticipated. It was not merely a day to celebrate his knighthood, a public acknowledgement of his contributions to sports and charity. It became a moment where he was unexpectedly cast into the center of one of the most dramatic family confrontations in modern royal history. For Beckham, it was both a career milestone and an emotional tightrope, requiring composure, diplomacy, and the ability to navigate unpredictable currents of tension. Beckham's journey to that day was not a straight path of fame and fortune. Born in East London, he was the son of a working-class family, raised with the discipline, focus, and drive that would later define his football career. Early mornings, endless drills, and countless hours honing his free kicks set him apart from his peers. But it was not just talent that propelled him forward. It was also his understanding of the world beyond the pitch. Beckham knew that public perception mattered as much as skill. Every goal scored, every interview given, every public appearance crafted the narrative of a man whose achievements extended far beyond the football field. Yet, Nothing in those experiences could fully prepare him for the intense scrutiny of a royal investiture overshadowed by family conflict. As Beckham entered Windsor Castle that morning, he understood the gravity of the occasion. The investiture, steeped in centuries of tradition, demanded a certain comportment. Kneeling before the king, he was expected to embody humility, respect, and adherence to protocol. It is a moment designed to symbolize service, honor, and recognition. Every gesture, from the placement of his hands to the tilt of his head, had significance. Yet, even as he followed the ceremonial steps, he could sense the tension in the room, an undercurrent that hinted at a story far larger than the knighthood itself. His instincts, honed by years of public exposure, told him something unusual was brewing. The moment Harry shouted, "I'm your child, not him," caught Beckham entirely off guard. On the pitch, he was used to dealing with intense scrutiny from fans, referees, and media alike. But this was different. This was deeply personal, emotional, and utterly unpredictable. For Beckham, the room had transformed in an instant. The ceremonial focus shifted from his achievement to the public confrontation between father and son. Every eye in the room flicked toward Harry. The hush of expectation shattered, replaced by gasps, murmurs, and the palpable tension of witnesses unsure of how to react. In that moment, Beckham faced a dual challenge. On one hand, he had to maintain composure, finishing the ceremonial requirements of the knighthood with dignity and poise. On the other, he had to navigate the delicate social dynamics of being inadvertently thrust into a personal family conflict. It was an unprecedented scenario, an individual achieving one of the highest public honors while simultaneously being caught in the emotional crossfire of centuries-old traditions and private grievances. His ability to remain calm under pressure would later be noted by journalists, royal observers, and insiders alike, marking him as a figure of steady professionalism amidst chaos. What went through Beckham's mind in those seconds is illuminating. He had dedicated decades to his craft, earning global recognition, fame, and respect. Yet, despite his decades-long exposure to public scrutiny, this was uncharted territory. The clash of royalty, ceremony, and personal emotion created a unique tension. He recognized the historical weight of the moment. To be knighted is to be elevated in the eyes of the nation, to join a lineage of individuals honored for exceptional service. But alongside that honor came the unexpected burden of being at the center of a very public family drama. It was a juxtaposition that tested both his emotional intelligence and his instinct for diplomacy. Beckham's response in real time was a study in controlled poise. Witnesses describe him as maintaining the formal gestures of kneeling, bowing, and acknowledging the king's ceremonial touch, all while processing the intensity of the unfolding situation. A slight flicker of surprise crossed his face, but it was quickly masked by a disciplined, calm demeanor. His mind worked on multiple levels, honoring the tradition, protecting his own composure, and reading the room to gauge the next moves of those around him. It was a balancing act few could have performed as seamlessly. What is remarkable is how Beckham internalized the moment without allowing it to derail his composure. For someone accustomed to handling public opinion, ranging from sports criticism to intense celebrity scrutiny, this situation required not only emotional intelligence, but also strategic thinking. He understood that any reaction, overt or subtle, would be magnified, dissected, and analyzed in real time. The global audience watching from televisions, smartphones, and computer screens would scrutinize every blink, every gesture, every facial twitch. In that environment, a single misstep could overshadow the ceremony itself, transforming an achievement into a viral controversy. Beckham's ability to maintain dignity amidst such intense pressure speaks to the character and discipline that had defined his public life for decades. Inside the castle, the ripple effects of the moment extended far beyond the immediate participants. Courtiers whispered among themselves, advisors debated the proper response, and staff members moved discreetly to contain both the emotional and logistical consequences. The palace, accustomed to managing public perception with precision, now faced a complex web of challenges, balancing the ceremonial integrity of the knighthood, addressing internal family dynamics, and mitigating the potential media fallout. Beckham, though not a royal by birth, suddenly found himself at the center of this intricate dance, navigating a situation that required both poise and strategic awareness. Beckham later reflected privately on the emotional intensity of the day. According to insiders, he expressed surprise not only at the eruption of emotion from Prince Harry, but also at the depth of the personal history.